Thank you, Dr. Ahmed, Dr. Malak, and Dr. Aparici for your excellent presentations. As we know, living with NET is more than treating the tumors. It's also about managing symptoms and overall living with the disease. So I'm curious to hear from all of you, what thoughts or advice might you share with people as they're learning to live with the disease? Mary, let's start with you.
I would say something you've probably heard before, but it's so important is have patience with yourself. You are the same person that you were before you were diagnosed. You are just a little bit more complex now. So getting back to some version of what you loved or did prior to your diagnosis would be so helpful to making you feel like your old self. So really embrace something that brings back that feeling.
Yeah, learning to live a new normal. Dr. Hendifar, what about you?
Well, I think it's really important to understand that in this disease, it's dealing with it is like training for a marathon or one of Mary's peer-to-peer races. You can't just start out in a sprint. When your first appointment comes out, you got to take it slow. You have to take it easy, and you have to take the whole thing in stride. It's going to be a long, long process. So take it easy and take it slow.
Yeah, we often hear that, and you're putting it into practice. Mary is, you are as well. And Dr. Lee, what about you?
So this is certainly a life-changing diagnosis, and we have to acknowledge that. And I absolutely agree. I think the idea is that we have to go by it, day by day, and learn how to potentially adjust to the diagnosis and potentially establish a new normal. But what that means is that it doesn't take away from all of the fulfillments that are still there in life and everything. So all of the various types of adventures that you're going to still have, all of the celebrations that you're going to still have, it's really all there. It's just learning how to live normal and finding fulfillment in that setting moving forward.
We can learn to live richly and fully. Thank you for that. So we often talk a lot in the patient advocacy world and maybe with our doctors or hear from educational meetings about clinical trials. So I'm curious to hear from you. What do you think patients should know about clinical trials? And why would you encourage people to consider clinical trials? Mary, what do you think?
Well, this one is very near and dear to my heart. And I guess I would first say if you want to spend a lot of time with your oncologist, like I do, Dr. Hendifar, then you get involved in a clinical trial. I just started a new clinical trial with Dr. Hendifar and Cedars-Sinai about 2 months ago. And I also was lucky enough to be in a trial about 12 years ago that lasted 6 years through Cedars as well. And I was on that medication for 12 years, 6 years after the trial ended. So I am definitely a veteran, and it is pretty exciting to have seen that first medication become a standard of care for pancreatic NET patients. And what I'm here to say is that trials are clearly for any stage of treatment, not when you feel you've exhausted all your options. So keeping open lines of communication with your medical team to find out what new trials are available is so incredibly important and can really change the course of your treatment.
Wow, 12 years. And thank you, Mary, for really contributing to the whole community to moving science forward so other people have these options. Dr. Hendifar, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, to me, clinical trials is really exciting and an opportunity. And for our patients, it's where their cancer family actually grows. It includes, the coordinators, the research staff, the pharmaceutical partners who's sponsoring the research. And, we all come together, work together to answer important questions which can affect the way that we treat the disease. Sometimes it is difficult to participate in clinical research. People are concerned about which arm they're going to get or about the unknowns and the uncertainties. But, we're very proud of our patients who participate, including Mary, who contributed to the Radiant-4 trial. And now she's a part of medical history. And I think that's what's really also exciting about it is that, we all get the opportunity in clinical trials is to give back and to kind of help the field move forward.
Regarding trials, one of my favorite emails that I've kept all these years was actually from Dr. Hendifar when the trial ended, and it was at the 6-year point, and he said to me in the email, "You have beat this trial into submission. Congratulations." So I'm pretty proud of that email.
Wow. We love that. That's so fun.
That's great.
Dr. Leaf, what would you have to add?
So I certainly agree that clinical trials has several advantages. It's a potential advantage from a patient perspective in the sense that you might be able to have a treatment that might not be available otherwise. And as Mary has demonstrated, certainly it has a larger impact on the global community as a whole in terms of potentially leading to approvals and having the ability to help the broader community and other patients as well. But the other key aspect of clinical trials, I think that's really important to know, is that it's all about timing. Clinical trials come and go. So they will be available at certain times, and they might not be available at other times. Just because you want to go on a clinical trial doesn't necessarily mean that it's available there. So it's really, really important for you to strategize with your team from the very beginning so that you know how early you should be taking potential calculated moves to join a clinical trial and when to hold back potentially for a later trial. So timing is absolutely key to clinical trials. And again, this comes with trust and that individualized approach that we have been discussing today.
Yeah, trust and individualized approach. Thank you. We're really excited to introduce our final set of speakers. Mary, let's start with you.
I feel so lucky to introduce you to two of my dear virtual friends that I consider a very important part of my net life. Dawn and Beth have been on our weekly support groups for a number of years now, and I feel lucky to have gotten to know them. Dawn has been through an excessive amount of NET treatments and shares his very broad experience with other NETs in such a compassionate way. And his lovely wife, Beth, has an extensive nursing background and offers so much insight and advice to patients and caregivers alike.
It is my true honor to introduce the current North American Neuroendocrine Tumor Society president, Dr. Pamela Kuntz, who is also a medical oncologist at Yale Cancer Center, and she'll be discussing with us the latest in systemic treatments and considerations for treatment sequencing. Certainly a topic that all of us want to know in terms of how we should be doing things.
Very pleased to introduce Dr. Simran Singh, a medical oncologist at Sunnybrook Health Sciences Center in Toronto, Canada. He'll be discussing the latest in clinical trials.
Josh is the president of the NorCal CarciNet community and one of the most actively involved, knowledgeable NET patients as well as NET patient advocates. His tireless work to improve outcomes for NET patients is truly unparalleled. Today, Josh will answer many of your questions on the topic of clinical trials. He will also share the exciting recent developments on how to ease the search for clinical trials specific to our diagnosis of NETs and just make it a less daunting and less confusing task. Thank you to Josh for always keeping us on top of the advancements in the NET world.